Brad Marchand built his reputation as the NHL's ultimate agitator, a player who never backed down from a hit, a chirp, or a fight. For more than a decade, he turned games into personal duels, frustrating stars and entire fan bases with his skill and attitude. But even the league's biggest pest had his limits. There were players who could rattle him, rivals who could drag him into grudges that lasted seasons. These weren't harmless spats. They were heated showdowns that shaped his image and sometimes the outcome of playoffs. In this countdown, we're going to reveal the 6 players Brad Marchand hated the most, the names he himself couldn't stand. By the end, you'll understand how these battles helped define his legend. If you love classic hockey rivalries and want more deep dives like this, hit the like button and subscribe now so you don't miss the rest of our countdown of Brad Marchand's most hated opponents. Number 6. The Toronto Maple Leafs Stars. For Brad Marchand, games against the Toronto Maple Leafs have always felt like a different sport. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and the rest of Toronto's young core aren't just another set of names on the schedule. They are the faces of a team he has had to outplay, outthink, and outlast year after year. Over the past decade, he has even said the Leafs have become Boston's biggest rival, overtaking the old feud with Montreal. Every time he steps onto the ice against them, the history is right there. Bruising series, dramatic goals, and thousands of blue and white jerseys screaming at him from the stands. Marchand's record against Toronto is proof of how deep this rivalry runs. He has been part of 3 Game 7 victories over the Leafs, all wearing a Bruins jersey. No other active player can match that. Each of those deciding games carried huge stakes. Wild comebacks, overtime winners, and entire seasons ending in one night. Marchand not only survived those moments, he thrived in them, piling up points while playing his usual hard-nosed style. He also made sure to leave a mark off the ice. After one of those decisive wins, Marchand twisted Toronto's playoff slogan into a joke, saying "belief" instead of "believe." It was a small wordplay, but it spread quickly on the social media and sports talk shows. Another reminder that he enjoys needling his rivals even after the final horn. For Leafs fans, it was salt in the wound. For Marchand, it was a way to show that the mental game matters as much as the scoreboard. Yet what makes this matchup compelling is that Marchand does not actually speak of hating Matthews or Marner. In fact, he has praised Marner as very talented and fun to watch, and has admitted that facing Toronto pushes him to raise his own level. Matthews' goal-scoring power and Marner's speed mean Marchand cannot afford a lazy shift. That blend of admiration and competitive fire is what gives the games their intensity. Another layer is the atmosphere in Toronto itself. Scotiabank Arena is always loud, and Leafs fans never miss a chance to boo or heckle Marchand. He has said those reactions make the games even more fun for him. After another series win, he smiled about the noise and told reporters it only gave him more energy to perform. For someone who thrives on being the villain, Toronto provides the perfect stage. This is why the Leafs Stars belong on a list of players Brad Marchand hated. They represent the team he has measured himself against for more than a decade. Even without angry quotes or personal feuds, Matthews, Marner, and their teammates have been the opponent he most loves to beat. Every big hit, every Game 7, and every smirk at the crowd has added another layer to a rivalry that has shaped his career and helped build his legend. Number 5. Brendan Gallagher. Brendan Gallagher and Brad Marchand are cut from the same cloth. Both are smaller forwards who play like giants, thrive on chaos, and take pride in being the kind of player opponents hate to see across the face-off circle. That mirror image is what makes their rivalry so heated. When the Boston Bruins meet the Montreal Canadiens, it is almost a given that somewhere in the first few shifts, Gallagher and Marchand will collide, jaw at each other, or draw a penalty. It is not a show for the cameras. It is 2 players who know exactly how to irritate one another. One famous example happened before a playoff Game 5. The puck had not even been dropped yet when Marchand and Gallagher started chirping and shoving. They ended up with matching minors for unsportsmanlike conduct before the game was a minute old. That kind of moment captures the tone of their matchups. Emotional, physical, and deeply personal. The Canadiens versus Bruins rivalry is already one of the NHL's oldest. Add in 2 of the league's most relentless agitators, and you get fireworks from start to finish. Yet away from the Boston versus Montreal spotlight, their relationship shows another side. When they both suited up for Canada at the 2016 World Championships, Gallagher and Marchand practiced together and even shared a few laughs. Gallagher admitted that Marchand was a very good player, who certainly gets under your skin. Marchand, for his part, called Gallagher the kind of guy you would want on your team in the playoffs. That mixture of respect and annoyance is rare and makes their on-ice battles even more interesting. It is not pure hatred. It is 2 competitors who understand each other perfectly. Gallagher's style also makes him uniquely irritating for Marchand to face. He goes to the net on every shift, takes cross-checks without flinching, and pops back up after being knocked down. He wins puck battles against bigger players, blocks shots, and never stops skating. Unlike some agitators, he rarely crosses the line into dangerous or suspendable plays. That reliability and persistence can wear down even someone as seasoned as Marchand. It is one thing to face a star who scores pretty goals. It is another to face a mirror version of yourself who does all the dirty work just as well. Their rivalry has also spilled beyond the rink in small, playful ways. Gallagher once made a lighthearted jab about Marchand in an Instagram post welcoming a new teammate to Montreal. It was friendly on the surface, but fans instantly saw it as another subtle poke in their ongoing duel. Those little off-ice moments keep the rivalry alive between seasons and give fans more to talk about. So even though Brad Marchand has never come out and said, "I hate Brendan Gallagher," the tension between them feels more personal than most of his other matchups. Every Bruins versus Canadiens game becomes a test of will between these two, every shift they spend trying to get under each other's skin adds another chapter to a rivalry that is as entertaining as it is intense. Gallagher lands at number 5 on this list not because of angry words, but because of how consistently he has drawn Marchand into battles, raised the stakes of their games, and become a living reminder of why the Boston versus Montreal rivalry still matters. Number 4, Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk. Brad Marchand and the Tkachuk brothers share one of the sharper rivalries in recent NHL years. It is not just about scoring goals or wins. It is about trash talk, stirring up tension, and trying to outsmart each other both on ice and in the media. Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk have often jacked up the volume. Marchand has called them out directly, especially when media comments from them seem to build momentum that could motivate their opponents. One of the key moments came during the Four Nations face-off tournament. Matthew Tkachuk said after a game, "It is our time now," a line meant to fire up fans and put pressure on Canada. Marchand answered by warning that sometimes talking too much in the media can backfire. When you shoot your mouth off in the media, it bites you. He meant that those words can give other players fuel, motivation, anger, something to use against you when it counts. He also said that while such talk is almost part of the regular season, once you get into best-on-best games, big tournaments, playoffs, national pride, words carry more weight. They may seem okay in small games, but when the margin is tight, mistakes happen. Still, Marchand backs up his criticisms with respect. He admitted that the Tkachuk brothers are great players who do what they do, and he praised how effective they can be at all levels. He did not just insult them, he acknowledged their talents and the danger they pose. That makes the tension real. It is not blind hate, but competitive friction between top players who know each other well. Another twist in this story is how things have softened at times. For example, when Marchand was traded from Boston to Florida, he and Matthew Tkachuk found themselves as teammates. In that locker room dynamic, they have started to show signs of understanding, even a bit of camaraderie. It is still early and their rivalry history is heavy, but the change is visible. The rivalry does not vanish overnight, but transitions like this shift the tone a bit. What makes Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk stand out in this list is how personal the friction feels. Their talk is not always just grandstanding. Sometimes it seems strategic, testing boundaries. Marchand seems to respect what they bring. Their energy, grit, the fact that they're willing to stir the pot. But he also is not shy about calling out when he thinks the Tkachuks went too far. That mix of admiration and frustration is what pushes them up higher on this hated most list. Even though Marchand has not used the same kind of hate language here as he did with some others, the tension with Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk feels more fierce, more sharpened by public words and big moments. There is respect, but there is also clear friction. It is that duality, hate turned down just enough by mutual recognition, that makes this rivalry one of his most charged. Number 3, Tom Wilson. Brad Marchand and Tom Wilson have built one of the most combustible matchups in today's NHL. Both are hard-nosed players who live on the edge, but Wilson's reputation for extremely physical, sometimes borderline hits, makes him a special case for Marchand. This is not a quiet rivalry, born from one playoff series. It is an ongoing clash of styles and attitudes, season after season. One of the flashpoints came when Wilson delivered a high hit on Boston's defenseman Brandon Carlo. Carlo ended up in the hospital, and Marchand exploded in front of reporters. He called the hit cheap and said Wilson took advantage of a player in a vulnerable spot. For a player like Marchand, who knows the difference between a hard but fair check and something reckless, that moment crossed a line. It was not just about his teammate getting hurt. It was about a sense that Wilson had broken the unwritten code of respect between players. That incident was not an isolated case. Wilson has a history of heavy checks, suspensions, and borderline plays that stir up anger across the league. Marchand has had to face that style multiple times. Each time, it is the same script. Wilson throws a thunderous hit, tempers flare, and Marchand finds himself speaking up or pushing back on the ice. Unlike his more playful jabs at Toronto or even his battles with Brad Gallagher, this is a rivalry rooted in fear for safety as much as competition. It is personal because Marchand sees the risk of serious injury to teammates. At the same time, Marchand also recognizes Wilson's skill. He knows Wilson is not just an enforcer. He can score, kill penalties, and play heavy minutes. That makes him harder to handle than a one-dimensional fighter. You cannot simply ignore him or goad him into a penalty. You have to survive his shifts and then beat him on the scoreboard. This mix of talent and toughness is exactly what frustrates Marchand the most, because it is not easy to neutralize. Their interactions also highlight how Marchand sees himself. He's often called a pest, but he has worked hard to shed the label of dirty player and become a respected scorer. Wilson, in contrast, still carries the reputation of a dangerous hitter. When Wilson crosses the line, Marchand speaks out because it threatens the image he has built. You can play tough and still be fair. In a way, Wilson represents a version of Marchand's past self that he's trying to move beyond. Another element is how often these two see each other. This is not a once-in-a-while opponent. They have shared the ice in regular season games, playoff series, and high-stakes matchups for years. That repetition adds layers to the tension. Every new hit recalls an old one, and every scrum carries the weight of previous battles. By now, they know each other's tricks, weaknesses, and temper buttons. Interestingly, even with all this, there is still no public quote of Marchand saying, "I hate Tom Wilson." The emotion shows in his voice and body language, but he never uses that word. Instead, he frames it around accountability and fairness. That distinction matters because this is not cartoonish villainy. It is a real, complicated rivalry between two players who both want to win and who both push the limits. All of this puts Tom Wilson much higher on the most hated list than pure skill rivals like Matthews and Marner, or even fellow agitators like Gallagher. The tension with Wilson is not about bragging rights or playful chirps. It is about repeated collisions, questions of safety, and the challenge of facing a powerful, unpredictable opponent. That is why Wilson sits at number 3. It is not because of a single headline, but because year after year, he has been the one player who can make Brad Marchand visibly angry, defensive, and determined all at once. We're only halfway through Brad Marchand's most hated opponents, and the stories get even more intense from here. If you're enjoying the countdown so far, tap the like button and subscribe now so you don't miss the rest of the rivalries coming up. Number 2, Matthew Tkachuk. If there is one modern player who can drag Brad Marchand into a fight with words as well as hits, it is Matthew Tkachuk. The son of Keith Tkachuk and the older brother of Brady, Matthew grew up playing with an edge. By the time he reached the NHL, he was already known as someone who could score goals, throw big hits, and stir up trouble with a single comment. Against Marchand, that recipe has created some of the liveliest confrontations of the last few seasons. Their friction first burst into view when Tkachuk started speaking boldly in the media before high-profile games and international tournaments. He promised his team would show who's boss, and called out opponents for being soft. Marchand did not ignore it, and in one post-game scrum he delivered his famous line, "When you shoot your mouth off in the media, it bites you." He meant that talk like that can motivate the other team, and he clearly wanted to warn Tkachuk that words carry weight at the highest level. It was unusual for Marchand to respond so directly to another player's trash talk, which shows how much it got his attention. On the ice, the story is just as heated. Tkachuk's style is built on getting into the dirty areas, bumping goalies, poking at pucks after the whistle, and exchanging shoves with defensemen twice his size. He has the hands to score and the personality to get under the skin. Marchand, who used to make his own living exactly that way, finds himself dealing with a younger version of his old self. Every shift against Tkachuk can feel like a mirror. Two players trying to out-agitate and outscore each other at the same time. Brady Tkachuk adds another dimension. He plays for Ottawa, not Florida, but he shares the same DNA and the same confrontational style. Marchand has had run-ins with both brothers in different games. It is not just one rivalry, it is a family rivalry spread across multiple teams and seasons. That keeps the tension fresh and makes every new meeting a test of pride as much as skill. Yet this story is not only about animosity. In recent years, circumstances have shifted. When Marchand moved to Florida, he and Matthew Tkachuk found themselves wearing the same colors. Being teammates forces a new kind of respect. They have practiced together, shared a bench, and even smiled about old battles. Fans have called it turning rivalry into brotherhood. It has not erased the competitive fire, but it has changed the tone. The same qualities that made them clash, high energy, relentless play, sharp tongues, now make them effective side by side. That blend of old grudges and new respect is exactly why Tkachuk belongs this high on the list. He has not received a public "I hate him" from Marchand like Thomas Plekanec did, but he has something just as powerful. Repeated verbal shots, big collisions, and a history of getting Marchand to break his usual cool. Few players have managed to make the league's top agitator answer back so often and so sharply. Tkachuk also forces Marchand to measure himself. Against a star scorer who stays quiet, Marchand can simply play his game. Against Tkachuk, he has to stay disciplined, answer the hits, respond to the chirps, and still produce on the scoreboard. That makes every meeting a full-body test of skill, will, and mental toughness. And for a competitor like Marchand, that can feel like both a threat and a challenge he cannot ignore. Even with the softer edges of recent years, the rivalry remains one of the most vivid of Marchand's career. It is not cartoonish hatred, but a living, breathing contest between two of hockey's biggest personalities. That is why Matthew Tkachuk, with Brady as an echo on the side, lands at number 2 on this list. The player who, more than almost anyone else, has been able to make Brad Marchand's blood boil while still earning his respect. Number 1, Thomas Plekanec. When Brad Marchand said it plainly, "I hate him. I can't stand him," he cut through every layer of poker face, rivalry, and public relations. That statement is rare for him, and it made one thing clear. Thomas Plekanec is not just another opponent. He is the one player who pushed Marchand past irritation into something more personal. Plekanec and Marchand's history runs deep. Both played in the original 6 rivalry circuit, particularly when Marchand's Bruins and Plekanec's Canadiens collided in the spotlight. Over years of hockey grudges between Boston and Montreal, these two often crossed paths in playoff series, crucial games, and heated moments. For many fans, their names evoke visceral reactions. But behind the scenes, there are stories that help explain why Marchand's hate was more than flair or showmanship. One turning point was a playoff race in which Plekanec and his squad frequently thwarted Boston's path. Every time Marchand's Bruins tried to break through the Canadiens, Plekanec was right in the way. The checks, angle plays, defensive stops, and the subtle taunts in the neutral zone created a chess-like war. Plekanec seemed to have a knack for staying out of the worst trouble while always being exactly where he needed to be, blocking lanes, getting in passing lanes, and using his defensive sense to slow Marchand's momentum. That kind of consistent, smart resistance can wear on a rival over time more than brute force can. Marchand's "I hate him" line was not an offhand comment. In interviews, he doubled down and expressed frustration that Plekanec irritated him over and over. He said Plekanec seemed to annoy him by doing little extra things, a stick here, a bump there, disrupting plays in ways that are not always easy to highlight. Those small details sometimes hurt more than the big hits. In Marchand's mind, they reeked of someone meddling in your game, constantly pushing into the zones you want to control. Even in that strong dislike, there is evidence of complexity. Plekanec is not a dirty player in the same sense as someone reckless. He is clever, positional, and experienced. That is part of what made him especially maddening to Marchand. Fighting him head-on would be dangerous, and playing him in the trenches was exhausting. So every time Marchand acted up or lost focus, Plekanec could sneak in a play or two that slipped through the cracks. Also consider the narrative. Marchand built his career as a pest who lived at the edge. Plekanec, meanwhile, operated as the composed soldier in the rival's path. Their styles clashed, Marchand screaming, jabbing, pushing the pace, and Plekanec quietly resisting, not always flashy, but existing constantly to frustrate. Over time, that dynamic etched itself into Marchand's psyche, fueling resentment deeper than what arises from one bad hit or one bad game. Their rivalry also had moments beyond the ice. During seasons filled with media buildup, team talk, fan chants, and playoff hype, these two names became symbolic. Whenever journalists asked Marchand about players who got under his skin, Plekanec's name came up repeatedly. Sometimes, Marchand would talk about how annoying it was to always look over his shoulder, to feel pressured in the tight zones when Plekanec seemed to shadow his path. That public voicing of frustration made the feeling more real to fans, not just to Marchand. It allowed viewers to sense that this beef was not cosmetic. It was rooted in repeated battles, mental strain, and little frustrations that built up over time. Plekanec's longevity worked against him in this rivalry. He played many seasons in many key showdowns. That continuity meant Marchand could not treat him like a flash-in-the-pan rival. Plekanec was always around, always dangerous, and always part of the same playoff scenes. That familiarity wears on even the toughest competitor. You do not forget him. You do not just move on. You live with him in the back of your mind. So yes, Thomas Plekanec is the only one with a direct hate line, but the real proof lies in the accumulation. Smart defense, game presence, media attention, repeated showdowns, and mental tug-of-war. Plekanec pushed Marchand not just to be better, but to carry that irritation for years. That is why, in every public statement, in every confrontation, and in every test of will, Plekanec earns the top spot on this list. He stands as the one name past simply rivalry, past annoyance, and into the territory of real loathing in Marchand's story. Brad Marchand's career has always been about more than goals. It's been about energy, personality, and the rivalries that make hockey unforgettable. In this countdown, we've seen the 6 opponents who tested him the most, from Toronto's young stars to Brendan Gallagher's grit, from Tom Wilson's punishing hits to Matthew Tkachuk's loud confidence, and finally to Thomas Plekanec, the one player he openly said he hated. Each rivalry revealed a different side of Marchand. Some were playful, some were physical, some were mental chess games, but all of them forced him to dig deeper. They pushed him to score more, skate harder, and refine his edge. They also gave fans the moments they still talk about today. The smirks, the chirps, the Game 7 wins, the quotes that went viral. That is why these 6 names matter. They're not just a list of grudges, they're a map of Marchand's journey from scrappy prospect to one of the NHL's most recognizable figures. Even as some rivalries cool and friendships form, those names still define him. They helped create the very moments that made Brad Marchand famous. And that's why fans will keep talking about them long after the final buzzer. Thanks for watching our look at the 6 players Brad Marchand hated the most. If you enjoyed this story, give the video a like, click subscribe for more hockey legends and rivalries, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive.